My name is Kevin. Welcome to Kevin Talks Tech. This is my podcast where I talk to fascinating people, or just people I just find interesting, about their life, their business, or what they do for work, and how they use technology. In this episode, I talked to Clare, who is up in Arctic Bay, Nunavut. That's on the northern end of Baffin Island. He lives in a small community of about, I think he said 4,000 people, if I got that right. So let's dive in. I spoke with Clare about his life and experiences, again, in Arctic Bay, Nunavut. We discussed a little bit about his work. We discussed a little bit about his work with Parks Canada, and that's an organization he's been with since he retired from the RCMP. We also talk about the technology challenges in the North, and his technology challenges in the North and in his community. They're a very tight-knit community, as you might imagine. We talk about the internet, what that's not the high-speed fiber that we've got down here, because that's obviously related to technology. And internet is very much in need these days, no matter where you are. Although Starlink is used in Arctic Bay, Clare and his family use 4G, so cellular data. It's not as fast. I'm not sure if they have unlimited data or not, but he admits it to being expensive either way. And it's how they connect. So not as fast as the internet that we have down here, but it's usable. But it seems to get the job done for what they need, at least as far as basic needs are concerned regarding online activity and what they need to do. We also talk about the cultural essence of the North. As you can imagine, life's a little bit different up there. We also talk about the cultural essence of the North. As you might imagine, life's a little different up there. It takes a little getting used to. But Clare and his family and everyone up there have been doing it for decades, centuries even. In fact, he talks about how some of the earliest ancestors have been up there. We also explore Clare's diverse roles, the challenges of remote living, and the significance of self-reliance. And we reflected on his professional and personal growth in a small and beautiful community, once again, on northern Baffin Island. Clare provides a comprehensive view of life in Arctic. As a former RCMP officer turned Parks Canada employee, Clare's experiences shed light on community relations, technology challenges, and his passion for photography. The discussion also explores the intersection of technology, community dynamics, and critical thinking skills in remote Arctic living. I really enjoyed this conversation with Clare. I really enjoyed this conversation with Clare, and I think you're going to enjoy it as well. He's a pretty private guy, but we get him to open up a little bit. And again, it's just fascinating to glean anything from what he says in terms of his life, which hasn't all been spent in the North, but a good portion of it has. When he joined the RCMP, he talks about starting off in Manitoba, then going to Saskatchewan, and then up to Fort Providence, which is in the Northwest Territories, and then up to Arctic Bay, and transitioning again from being an RCMP officer, which is, I imagine, a little different than it is down here. It's not a perspective that a lot of people get to see or experience. That's why I really wanted to talk. So that's why I really wanted to talk with Clare and get a sense of what life's like there and what he's up to, his cabin, kind of his pride and joy with that. And what else did he say? A bed and breakfast he ran for a couple of years. But just overall, the sense of community, right? Some of us barely know our neighbors down here, whereas up there, you know everybody. I really hope that you'll get a lot out of this conversation. And I know I did, for darn sure. Let's get right to it. Here's Clare in Arctic Bay, Nunavut. Hello, Clare. Wonderful to meet you. I'm so glad you agreed to be on my podcast, Kevin Talks Tech, here to talk about your life, your work, how you use technology, and probably maybe selfishly for my sake, about hoping you can talk as much as you're willing to about life up north, kind of day to day, or things that kind of stand out to you that you think people might find interesting, or that you find interesting. So we'll go through the questions here, but again, thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and, I was going to say your business, but your work?
Yeah, so I live in Arctic Bay, Nunavut, which has got a certain cachet to it, and it's somewhat unique. It's North America's third most northerly community. There's Resolute Bay and Grise Fjord that are above there, and it's in the high Arctic north end of Baffin Island. I originally came here in 1999. I was posted here with the RCMP. I did the final 4 years of my service here and retired. Did a couple things after I retired, built and ran and lost a bed and breakfast. And I worked briefly for the Housing Corporation here, and then was the economic development officer in Arctic Bay for a number of years. And then now I'm with Parks Canada. My roles changed somewhat over the 5, 6 years that I've been with Parks Canada. So,
Parks Canada. Okay.
Parks Canada, yeah.
Okay.
So
you said
I
you
started
moved.
off.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I
I
didn't mean
started off with Parks Canada. I started off with working the area, the nation's largest national marine conservation area, Tedler-Tipamanga National Marine Conservation Area, and it's on the cusp of officially coming into being. But now most of my roles with
Sorry, where?
Smirlik National Park.
Smirlik.
Yes, Smirlik National Park is, and I have to tread carefully here because talking about my work
Sure.
is regulated, probably the best way to put it. But Smirlik National Park it's one of 5 parks we have in Nunavut. And it's the entry points are here and Pond Inlet. It consists of kind of 3 areas, Oliver Sound, Violet Island, and Roder Peninsula. And so that's where it is, north end of Baffin Island.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you said you just said you had to tread carefully in terms of what you're saying and confidentiality. I'm not sure, but I respect that. But I am curious if you can give us a general sense of your work at all.
Sometimes I'm not even sure. Currently, my role is with community relations and visitor experience is what involves. Because I'm the only, most of the staff for Smirlik is based at a Pond Inlet. I'm the only Parks Canada employee here in Arctic Bay, so I have a lot of catch-all things that I do, doing community relations and developing stuff, visitor experience, and writing reference documents and things along that line. So.
Okay. Okay. So you retired from the RCMP. We know that. How long sorry, maybe I missed this. How long were you with the RCMP?
24 years and 2 days. I miscounted. I gave them an extra day.
Gave an extra day.
No,
All of it.
I did the last 4 years of my service here. I had 24 years with the RCMP.
So I got to ask, where were you before that?
Immediately before here, I was in Fort Providence, Northwest Territories, and before that, I was in F Division, Saskatchewan. Was Saskatoon Detachment for a couple of years. I was in Rose Valley Detachment and L'Orange Detachment. Of course, I did my training there as well. And I did a brief amount of time on language training, about 8 months in Montreal. And I was in D Division in Manitoba before that, Thompson twice, and Winnipeg once.
Okay. Can I ask where were you born and raised?
Manitoba, small town Manitoba, near the Saskatchewan border, Roblin.
Okay. Okay. And then you joined the RCMP, you went to these different detachments, the different locations. I won't try to list them off the top of my head of what you just said, but it's recorded, so I'll listen to it later. I find it just fascinating. And then you were posted, I think is the word, to Arctic Bay, where you said you spent the last 4 years of your RCMP career. Why'd they send you to Arctic Bay?
Part of it that I wanted to.
Okay.
I wanted to come north. I did a fair amount of my service in small Aboriginal communities or northern places. It had long been a desire of mine to go to the north, and been a long desire to go to the high Arctic.
Why is that, if I could ask?
We dive into a lot of that, but part of it is after I've been to communities, I quite enjoy.
Okay.
I quite enjoyed the work and quite enjoyed being in the communities. But early on, I was one of these guys that when I was a kid wanted to be a Mountie and never grew up. And I was lucky we actually were social with several of the detachment members in my hometown growing up type thing. They'd be for coffee and things like that. So I knew quite a few of them, and quite a few of them had been in the north type thing. So it had long been there as one of my goals when I eventually got in.
Okay. Okay. Again, fascinating. You mentioned a couple other communities. The one that jumps to my mind, you didn't say it, but it jumps to my mind because my dad was in the military. Growing up, he put in his 20 as they do. And he spent 6 months, I was very young, but he spent 6 months up in Alert.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it, but he spent 6 months there. That was my extent growing up of the North. My knowledge, excuse me, growing of what life would like is about life in, not life in the North, but what's up there, so to speak. So you didn't mention Alert. You mentioned obviously Arctic Bay. I think was it Providence? I think I
Port,
misheard that. Say it again.
Port Providence.
Okay.
It's on the Mackenzie River, south of Yellowknife. It's when I was there, it was the ferry crossing that you take on the highway up to Yellowknife. It's now got a bridge that's there since I've been there. But yeah.
Okay. And I think you mentioned at least one more community.
That was my only community in the Northwest Territories, and Arctic Bay has been my only community in Nunavut.
Okay.
I've been in several places in northern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba.
Oh, maybe that was it. Okay.
La Ronge in northern Saskatchewan, Thompson in northern Manitoba.
Yes.
Type thing.
Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. You had a sense of the North. You were posted or chose to either way. You moved to what's known as Arctic Bay. I almost want to be careful there because I'm very aware that's not the original name. It's I believe the settlers called it that, if my research is accurate.
Arctic Bay is named after the bay itself, which was named after Captain Willie Adams' whaling ship, the Arctic, which wintered here.
Okay.
And then in 1910, the Canadian government ship, the Arctic, also wintered here.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, type thing. The name for Arctic Bay itself in Inuktitut is Ikpiarjuk. And
Ikpiarjuk? Okay. I'll look it up again.
If you read that, you'll see that most places online will say that it refers to the pocket because Arctic Bay is in a kind of a bowl of hills and valleys that surrounds the bay type thing. But it actually refers to a pass, and there's a pass between sorry, my dogs are going to be making noise. There's a pass between here and the next bay over, Victor Bay type thing, and it refers to that. But,
okay. So the people who live there, yourself included, you call it Arctic Bay?
Most people call it Arctic Bay or Ikpiarjuk. It's kind of interchangeable.
Okay.
Several communities have reverted from their colonial names into Inuktitut only. And it's like a lot of the place names around here for features and things along that line. As much as possible, it's the Inuktitut name because that's what they were originally called.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's one thing about social media, but also I've always been aware of that sort of thing, and colonialism, how the settlers changed things, and I don't want to get deep into that for this conversation, but I am very aware of it, and I try very much to respect it because obviously they came along and they just decided to change things in a number of ways, including the names of the places, and I guess. I could say I'm not really. Yeah, I'm a settler. I'm sure many of us are certainly descended from the settlers, and I live in Red Deer, Alberta, and that's not the original name. I'll have to look it up again, but just these kind of things where I try to have an awareness of it's not just what I was taught in schools. There's a whole history, and we were not the first ones here, so that matters to me.
Yeah.
So you moved to Arctic Bay, I'll call it that, until I'll try to refine the language later and practice that. You spent 4 years there. What was in those 4 years, and I suppose beyond, but in those particular 4 years, what was life like?
Not a lot different than it is now. When I came here, I was posted actually to Nanisivik. So Nanisivik was a mining community, 30 kilometers away from road. We lived in Arctic Bay. Our housing was in Arctic Bay, but our main office was in Nanisivik. And so we split time between the two communities. And Nanisivik was a community. It's not like a mining camp. It had school, daycare, store. It was set up as a community. Families lived there, type thing. It's about 200 60 people, if I recall, in Nunavut at the time. And then I'd pushed when I was here to have the detachment itself move over here. And we opened the detachment here in November of 2000, and then still policed Nunavut until it was no more. So we had, say, 30-kilometer commute every day. I used to laugh. I used to tease people when I lived in Fort Providence because my house was literally 30 feet from the detachment. I'd say commute was hard this morning. It took me 5 seconds. So I got here and I had a half-hour commute over mountainous roads to get to my detachment.
Yeah.
And most places in the north, when you're working for places like the RCMP and stuff like that, you end up having to rely on your own resources a lot.
Yeah.
Type thing. So that's no different than here, and that's part of its charm type thing. And yeah,
I keep having, I say flashbacks, but these memories. I'm almost finished watching. I think I mentioned it to you on Mastodon. What's the name of it? Like the fourth season or something. The one with Jodie Foster. And I'm not sure exactly how truly accurate it is. Have you seen it?
actually, I haven't. I've got a number of friends and acquaintances that were involved in the show from
That's what you
Nunavut,
said. Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah.
but I haven't watched it yet.
A little off
So on a
topic.
wrap
Yeah,
to do.
absolutely. I strongly recommend it. Again, I'm not tell you I'm sure it's dramatized as TV shows will do, but fantastic acting, and this it seems to give a relatively accurate sense, as if I have a lot of knowledge about these things, like the obviously the months without daylight or the sun rather, and just a general sense of kind of what life is like. They're depicting, I think it's Barrow, Alaska, but they don't call it that. So you mentioned that you have a few friends who were people that you know that were involved in that production.
Yeah.
So what was involved there?
Well, they had small roles and musical roles in it. Tanya Tagak and Charlotte Komanek and Nancy Mike, who you might know from the Jerry Cans,
I
former
don't.
band.
I'll look it up.
Jerry Cans, look it up. The thing that they were involved in it, and plus had, in addition, had some minor roles type thing.
Okay. I don't recall. I don't recall singing or music, but maybe that's coming up in the.
Singing.
Sorry.
You hear some throat singing in it.
Not that I recall. I have to watch it again. I don't recall that, but okay.
Yeah, they were.
Maybe it was cut out or something. I'm not sure. Maybe they filmed
No,
it. They didn't use it.
And they were. And again, I haven't seen the show, so I
Yeah.
can't say
I-
for sure what roles they had. But I saw photos of them on the set.
Okay. And to my knowledge, it was filmed, according to Wikipedia, for whatever that's worth, it was filmed in Iceland. So did people that they had to travel to Iceland, or is it just different locations that they filmed at?
Yeah, they would have been on set on location. A number of circumpolar people, especially the artists, spent a lot of time traveling amongst the circumpolar world, Greenland, Iceland, here.
Okay. I know they didn't go to Barrow. They read an interview where I guess they didn't have, I won't say the resources, but the infrastructure to support the production there. So they definitely did in Iceland and Reykjavik, and I guess to an extent of what they needed if they came to
Yeah.
Nunavut or wherever.
There's quite a continues to grow. There's a very vibrant art scene in the north, and they're actually just in the beginning stages of filming a sitcom in Iqaluit, Nunavut-based, based sitcom that's going to Netflix and can't remember where else, maybe CBC. I'm not sure, but it's
Yeah,
going to be.
I would guess CBC. Sorry, I was going to ask you, what is it called?
I don't know if they've got anything beyond a working title right now. I'm not 100% sure, but it's very minorly involved in trying to do some of the cast report. They had some casting down here, basically putting out the word and things along that line. But living in Nunavut is a lot like living in this very large, small place. There's under 40,000 of us live here, and the 6 degrees of separation are more like 2 or 3. So
Yes, I got a very strong sense of that while doing the show, but I also realized it with different things I've watched and read over the years. And that what you just said, it seems to be very true.
yeah.
Yeah. All righty. We talked a little bit about yourself. Sorry, your background, and you spoke about the work that you do. You said that you're taking a step back from photography.
But
Can you talk about that?
less less a step back from the actual photography, but less more from a business side of things. I'm not really as keen on breaking out studio lights to take portraits at thing or or stumping for spots in magazines and things along that line. Long enjoyed photography in various forms. It's been part of my life for a long time. And I live in a place that, has incredible light and incredible opportunities to do nice stuff. And
Beautiful, beautiful, not just
nowadays you
nice,
carry a
beautiful
decent
work.
camera in your pocket all the time.
Yeah. I was gonna say you have beautiful. I haven't seen, I'm sure, most of it, but what's on the website and my research, I won't say gifted, but you're a phenomenal photographer.
Thank you very much.
And saddened me when you said that you're taking a step back from work in general, leaning toward retirement. I'm not sure, but certainly taking a step back from the photography and I guess other things.
Yeah, sometimes things like that you can enjoy what you're looking at without having to look through a camera. There's
But
there's
then
plenty of
how do the rest of us enjoy it then? I'm kidding.
plenty of beauty in the world type thing,
Yes.
and there's plenty here. And actually, like to think that's one of my strengths is
I would say
to
it
know
absolutely is.
the beauty around me a lot.
Yeah, and to know how, I'll just say this for the sake of saying, because I'm a tech guy, but there's just generally speaking, and I've heard photographers talk about this on some podcasts where most of us have the smartphone. I have an iPhone myself, and it's gotten to be at this point a phenomenal camera device, and it does a lot of automatically, it does a lot of machine learning, and it can do a great job for the people who aren't photographers necessarily or know f-stops and all the rest of these things to compose the photograph, the scene in just the right way with the, of course, with their vision. Like I can step outside and take a walk or what have you, take a photo or something, and I'm grateful I don't have to deal with all that stuff. I can just take the photo and it turns out reasonably well to my eye. Of course, nothing compared to your work. Again, I just like to recognize that, and it sounds like you're using a like DSLR, like the fancy cameras, and you're doing it right. There's no way those are iPhone photos.
Yeah, a lot are a
Really?
lot are these because it's always there. You're not lugging around a camera all the time, and
Yeah.
it's easy. But I used to a lot of photographers' pet peeves is sometimes they'll say, "Oh, you got a really nice photograph. You must have a really nice camera."
Yeah.
And so my standard answer to that was, "Oh, it was a beautiful supper. You must have a really nice stove." Because
Okay.
cameras are tools, type thing. And
I,
so
I would argue I have a stove. I have what I think is a nice supper to me, but it's not going to a
the stove.
fancy restaurant or some meals that you have been even homemade that I've had that have just been phenomenal. I can have a
Yeah,
stove. It's what you do with it.
yeah, no, that was the point of that. Nice house, you must have a nice hammer, type thing. Because the camera is a tool,
Yeah.
type thing, and it's how people are able to convey what they see with that tool that makes the difference. That said, there is a phenomenal amount of good photography out there from people that use their phones, and people that see something nice and throw up their phone or their camera or
Yeah.
use the point
And and
shoot and take
and,
a
and the
picture.
one thing I do know, because my knowledge isn't great when it comes to, I'm no photographer for sure, but I've learned over the years about raw photography, where this, but all like everything that comes into the frame goes into the digital memory or however that works, and then they can play with it, they can tinker with it later to create the photograph, the image that they want, and it's not just the iPhone doing its best in the moment to guess what you would make the best photograph.
There's editing that you do on your phone as
Yeah.
well. The advantage of RAW is that it's non-degenerative, so like you can hit a button and put everything back exactly the way it was, type thing. You can change it at any time, sort of thing. There's no compression. If you think of RAW as a negative from the old film days, so you have your negative there, and then it's your post processing, dodging and burning and everything like that. That changes things. You're changing your contrast. You're brightening up your colors, or lessening highlights or increasing highlights, and you can do that, and more you can do that on your phone and
Yes.
things like.
Yeah.
The advantage of RAW is that it's easy to go back.
See,
or it's easy to change. It doesn't change the basic information
correct.
on. It doesn't change your negative, if you will.
Yeah, and I'll just do my final point on that, and I'll move on to my other questions. I can't help but think, I'll just speak for myself here, but I'm old enough where I'm 42 this year. But I remember being in high school at the turn of the century, as they say, and it was at that point in time where that the beginning of that transition to digital cameras was happening. Very beginning, as far as I'm concerned. And in one of my high school, I think they called electives, but one of these kind of these extra courses that you just take for extra credit, but I enjoyed it. They had the film cameras and they had the dark room processing room.
Yeah.
And I wish to God that I had somehow been able to take a photo of myself working in that room. It was something else. I didn't really understand it fully, certainly not a photographer in high school, but really enjoyed that. And then as things have progressed with digital cameras and even with the smartphones as they came to be, really makes me appreciate it a lot more. And I was sad to see, to a certain extent, film photography kind of dying out, even though I think it still has a place. But I absolutely appreciate having my phone and the phones over the years to just take a good enough photo of what I'm trying to take a photo of, whether it's mom and I on a cruise or what have you, and we just can't lug around all that stuff or know how to use it. Yeah.
It's always there. It slips into your pocket really easy, and it's easy to pull it out when you see the light just right, or if working at the cabin and you want to show what you did.
Speaking of which, I'd love to talk about your cabin. If you tell us about that.
Oh, I'm building a cabin.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yeah, no, I'm building a cabin, get away from the hustle and bustle of Arctic Bay. So I'm building a cabin over in Victor Bay, which is the next body of water over the hills from here. It's about 10 kilometers away in the summertime. It's a little shorter now because we can drive across the ice. The snow's not too bad. And yeah, it's a bit of love. I enjoy carpentry. It makes me think. It makes me think ahead, especially that you're not working from a plan. So, or I'm not working from a plan. So you have to have a general idea what you want to do. And then you have to be able to say, okay, if I want this like this, what do I have to do now? And that's one of the beauties of carpentry. 15 years ago, I couldn't spell carpenter. Now I are one. Oh, might be getting noisy here. I see my nephews. Looks like my nephew's being dropped off. When I retired, or when we were about to retire, my wife and I had set upon the idea that we were going to build a bed and breakfast and run a bed and breakfast, and that's what I was going to do post RCMP type thing. I had a very good friend who I knew from Iran, who was a master carpenter thing, and I convinced him to leave his job and come up and be my project manager for the bed and breakfast. So it took us about 18 months to build a bed and breakfast.
All good.
My dogs.
All good.
Dogs.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to pause for a second here.
Yep.
And Gary came up and basically was the only carpenter on the job with any that you could really call a carpenter type thing. And Gary has all the skills in addition to being a great master carpenter. He's also very patient and a good teacher type thing. So that's where I learned to do carpentry.
Okay. So he came up to work to help you build or maintain or repair the B&B?
We build one. We built
Build
it
one
from scratch. So
okay.
5,000 square feet and things. So it took us about 18 months to get it to doing that. It's, if I have to say so, it's probably one of the nicest buildings around and extremely well made because of his skills and his particular about meticulous with the things you do. That's where the basic skills. And then previous to that, I had never ever built anything.
Okay. So it's just trying to just don't take this the wrong way, but I'm trying to figure out in my head of how I guess I want to say the need for B&B, but I'm not trying to be rude when I say that. I don't imagine any hotels in the area. When people want to stay in the B&B, are they passing through town? Are they fairly popular up there?
Oh yeah, we've got a hotel here, 20 beds type thing, and it's not near enough. And they also the hotel also runs our old B&B as a kind of like an annex, that type of thing. But we've got a lot of, it's certain times of the year, it's very hard to get any accommodation here because of it. We've got people that travel here all the time, doctors, dentists, government officials. Right now, it's very important in general to consult with communities when you're going to do anything in them. So there's constant rounds of consultations that go on. We have a lot of construction that goes on here. There's a new building for the Kikitani Inuit Association that's going up. I'm looking at it right now, my window type thing. 8-plex and a 12-plex will be going up to this spring type thing. And so you've got to house the workers that come up to do that and everything like that. So now there's quite a, like I say, the community misses out on a number of things because we don't have the hotel capacity that other places in the north might.
Yeah. How long was the B&B up and running?
We opened in 2006, I believe, and lost it to our mortgager in 2009, late 2009. So about 3 years, but it's still operating. It was operating as an annex for the hotel since that time, basically.
Okay. That I don't mean to sound glib, but that must have been hard to lose that.
In a lot of ways, yes, it was, but there's also a lot of worse things that can happen to your life.
I'm glad it's still being used and being appreciated as attached to that hotel.
Yeah, there's a line in Master and Commander, the movie Master and Commander, where
I love that movie. Yep.
Yeah, I do too. I just wish it had been loved more.
Yeah,
I would have loved to see more of them. Where a couple of the officers are talking about the ship, and they said Captain Aubrey has got so much blood in this thing, he considers it a relative. And I kind of
yes,
it's not about the bed and breakfast in a lot of ways.
Of course,
it consumed my life for 18 months in building it type thing, and every stick in the place, and you learn how complex a house actually is.
I'd like to think I would have loved to have learned that myself, but the reason why I say that is my dad was a military carpenter. He was a workaholic. He didn't bring he didn't even talk about his work when he came home, so I know nothing about what he really did. I wish that he had put it, not to get too much into it, but I wish he had taken more time to show me things and talk about his work, never mind his time in the military. But all I saw, it was just, he came home, took care of the kids, paid the bills, but watched TV and just stuff around the house. He wasn't really talking about his work. But like I had there's I would say little things, but a bed, there's a dresser, some people for clothes and whatnot. And his main job, and we were posted around the country a few times because of it, where he was building and maintaining the housing on the bases. And after he had left after 20 years, he went to go work at Home Depot for almost a decade, helping people find things, do things, etc. And he loved the work. The pay wasn't fantastic, but he loved the work. And then, very long story short, he left that position to be a security guard at the airport for almost a decade, then came down very ill and passed away in 2016. But it's terminal illness, which is never fun. But yeah, military carpenter. My building things is I can put together a computer. That's what I can do. We've had to hire a handyman in the community in Red Deer, as where we are, to take care of the kind of stuff around the house that needs to be repaired because I just don't have a handyman bone in my body. But I can tear apart a computer and put it together and reinstall Windows and anything you could possibly think of when it comes to tech. So I guess there's a need for that. But again, yeah, sorry about the B&B. Heart and soul goes into something like that for damn sure.
Again, there's much worse things than that.
I know, but
we had food in our belly and roof over our head all the time type of thing.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's easy to get too caught up in things.
I know.
And not that.
Okay. So I guess, what is it now? I do hear you, but I like to acknowledge and appreciate things. Like we can look back, we can say, well, that was a great adventure, or that was worth doing. That was a fantastic experience. It is what it is. It's over now. Like your life goes on, but it's always a part of you. So yeah.
I learned quickly that I was a good host and a terrible businessman. So
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm a terrible businessman. I'm struggling right now to getting things off the ground since the relaunch, and doing different things. I don't have a business partner. I can't afford to hire anybody yet. But a little behind the scenes there. But this podcast is certainly part of it in terms of the marketing, and hopefully it'll bring people to bring a little more attention to what it is I'm doing and how I can help people as my tagline to better understand and use their technology. And there's I to have a kind of a I want to say entertaining conversation, but having very worthwhile conversations with people who either as part of their business or just part of their work or part of their life. 'Cause everybody uses technology differently, and every computer is different. Every phone is different. The home screen to the apps you use to the just different things you do want it. None of them are identical in any way, shape, or form because they're all personalized to whether it's work or again personal. And I just take great joy in helping people with that. And of course, things never really get simpler with technology, but if we can at least take it day by day to better understand it, maybe we can improve a few things and it could be a little less frustrating for us. On the lines of technology and I guess the issues that we face, what are some of the technology issues that you face, maybe particular to living in Arctic Bay, and how have you resolved them? And do you think there's a feels like a silly question, but a difference between how you might resolve a technology issue in Arctic Bay versus in Saskatchewan, in a more populated area with more services, etc.
Yeah, it's definitely has more challenges here,
Okay.
but we also are very connected.
Oh,
We look over the years type thing, the change in the 24 odd years I've been here type thing. But probably one of the biggest things is expense. It's an expensive place to be on the internet here type thing. But we now have cell service. We've long had high speed internet, although not as high as any place else. Our high speed would probably be pretty frustrating for most people in the south.
I'm honestly
Um,
surprised the connection's been as good as it has been, with all respect.
yeah, it's not bad most days, but it can be bad at times. And plus, there's no easy way to get support when things go wrong. Anything that can't be solved over the phone, type thing. If you have a hardware problem, you can't run down to the Apple store if your phone's glitchy.
So what do you do?
Live with it. Wait till you're out. Send things out.
Be without a phone or a
Rely on the people that have been on YouTube and know how to replace a broken screen type thing.
oh,
Bring in stuff from Amazon and do
oh
that.
yeah, you could do that. That's
Uh,
good. I'm glad they deliver.
we won't talk about that too much because we aren't on one of their delivery places, but there's workarounds,
Got it.
sort of thing. But yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge is the expense and repair. And that's the same with anything. I've got on our vehicle, we've got 2 or 3 outstanding recall things that you're supposed to do.
Mm.
You can't do it because there's no one here to do it. So you'd have to send your truck south on the sea lift and you wouldn't see it for a year.
So you can't do the recalls often, if ever. So when you have to change the tires, whatever it is that you need to do with the car, you doing it all yourself?
We have Hamlet has a garage here, and companies like the heavy equipment guy and the co-op bring in mechanics from time to time.
Okay.
That type of thing. So if you have stuff that you need done, you can
Okay.
do that. Often it involves a wait. The main place you go to get vehicle repairs would be, if you're not doing something yourself, would be the Hamlet garage, and they've got other priorities. They aren't a business. They're there to make sure that the water truck and the sewer truck keep running and their vehicles work and the grader works and things along that line. Yeah, you get very self-reliant with anything here. And I live in an Inuit community where people have been self-reliant for 5,000 years type thing. So there's a lot of skill here and a lot of being able to figure out,
Yeah.
not so much with technology,
Oh yeah.
but with anything else.
Yeah. I think of things like I've got a couple of desktop computers in front of me. I had a laptop. I'm going to get another one at some point. I've got an iPad and the phone. So the phone stuff, I don't know how to repair the screen. I don't know how to get into the innards of it to make those kind of repairs. So for a lot of people, I imagine, it's almost like, in general, I think it's a throwaway society where things they get to a point where they get frustrating enough or not working enough, and you go, oh, screw it, I'll just buy enough. I'll just buy a new one. Hopefully, one can afford it. But for a desktop computer, I've got, thankfully, the ability, Amazon, the store, there's a London Drugs, there's a Best Buy, there's different things that are reasonably close by to me. And Memory Express, when we lived in near Edmonton a few years ago, and I can just go and buy the part, and they can install it, I can install it, and on with life. But if you have to replace a video card, a sound card, etc., do people in Arctic Bay or even the North in general, do they tend to have kind of those desktop computers with those replaceable parts, or is it they get a laptop, they run it into the ground, so to speak, again, all due respect, and then
A
they
little,
buy and then they buy a new one because they don't want.
little bit of both there. There's not a lot of great amount of disposable income here in some ways type thing. And there are probably some people around the community that are very tech savvy type thing. I
Oh
would
yeah,
say that in terms of platforms, most people would have phones here now than
sure,
laptop, anything along that line sort of thing.
okay,
And places like, say, the Hamlet that has a lot of the computers and stuff like that. Every once in a while, they'll bring up somebody to do something, or the GN will send somebody in for that sort of repairs or maintenance, or replacing systems, servers, and things along that line on the large
okay.
thing. But in terms of individuals, I would say that most people would, and I think it's going that way in the world anyway, is most people are use a phone type of thing.
Yeah, I think of things like virus removal or having to reinstall Windows or these types of tasks that it's usually the more tech savvy among us that can take care of those sort of things. But there's a couple of computer or tech savvy people in town that people can bring their laptop or their desktop computer or even their phone to and say, This isn't working properly. Can you fix it?"
There's a lot of, you'd see a lot of things on, say, Facebook saying, I have this issue, does anybody know? And throwing it out to the hive mind sort of thing.
Yeah.
Type thing. There's no sort of business in town or anything
Okay.
along that. Again, I think that most people use phones, and I
Yeah.
think it's seen as disposable. There's markets for when we get a new phone, one of us in the family gets a new phone, we sell the old one type thing. There's always
Yeah.
snatched up pretty quick sort of thing.
Okay.
Uh, so
That's
there's not of that would go on.
okay. One thing that jumps to mind is I think it was last year at some point. Mom needed to apply for something in terms of the federal government. She had to fill out an online form and that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. So I helped her with that, and she has I think she had a Windows computer at the time. She has a MacBook now, but either way, I helping her with that. And I remember I decided at the time, it's like, okay, because I just think this way, like, how easy is this to use? Because we've had enough difficulty trying to figure this out on the computer with the large screen. So I know a lot of websites where you go to apply for things, be it in Alberta, be it federally, what have you, they don't always think mobile or make it very easy to use. Do people have challenges in that regard? And do they wish that they had a laptop or a desktop computer, but they just can't maintain it?
There's I'm not really sure, again, because in some ways insular, but we do have, and just to comment on having to do something on a federal website. It's my apologies.
Okay.
At the risk of offending my overlords, I found very few things that are more cumbersome than trying to do something online.
Yeah,
For
no,
the,
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't want to get political,
yeah,
but it was definitely a frustrating. I don't even remember what she was applying for. It was something,
oh,
and it was just. I've even done it in Alberta for something I had to apply for a couple of years ago, and I again tried to do it on my phone just to see if I could do it. That was way too frustrating, even for me, and I'm as tech savvy as it gets, Claire. So I had to go on the computer and figure it out there. So I'm just trying to gauge
yeah,
as to how people are coping
and
on their phones.
I think I understand why that they're like that, in terms of there's a great expectation that there won't be any malfeasance that that goes along their website. So there's all these steps and cumbersome things.
No, I understand that, but yeah,
they aren't
yeah.
very user friendly.
No, they're not, and I don't know how that's your
You
fault, but
have
you apologized for it for some reason.
just I don't want to criticize the people that sign my paycheck too badly.
Oh no,
Um,
I hear from everybody. Well, it's I think it's healthy to criticize a little bit. I don't know if it'll change anything, but I don't even know if they care, to be honest. They did. This is just me speaking, but over the years and different things I've had to deal with in that regard, things are just the way they are, and once in a while something improves to make it a little more usable. But again, I just think of someone like my mom who is going through that experience, even on the desktop computer, where it could be a little more user friendly. Is all I'm saying.
yeah, with people that do need help, we do have a worker here in town, a government liaison officer whose job in part is helping people navigate government type things. So, and then people ask, you get questions all the time because people know that you're your way around computers or whatever.
Yeah.
And people ask and stuff like that. It's a very cooperative place in a lot of ways.
Yes, we have to be. Yeah.
It's one of the things that just really drew me to Arctic Bay. Is it reminds me a lot of growing up in small town Manitoba in '50s and '60s, where it was a community, a very strong community, and you looked after each other. So
Yes.
there's a lot of that sort of thing, and there's some built-in stuff. That's not to say that things work easily all the time, but get by.
Yes. And honestly, I want to say yearn, but that's one of the things I deeply miss about Nova Scotia. We lived there for a few years growing up. That was one of Dad's postings. And to this day, whenever I talk to somebody who's out there, be it Newfoundland, be it PEI, be it Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, that real sense of community, of your neighbors, you help each other out, and everyone's got their skill set, and everybody more or less knows what that is, and they can reach out to that person and on occasion and get the help that they need. And Red Deer has that to some extent, but when it comes to the cities, I think that's a little harder to find where you don't necessarily know your neighbors very well. So that's one thing I absolutely appreciate about watching shows like True Detective or different TV shows and movies. That's what reminds me of your neighbor, and you help each other out. And even though it sounds like you're indoor plumbing and sewer and different things, although it might be set up a little different, I'm not sure. But to where you have the handyman and people who know their way around, and you make it work. You find solutions.
Yeah, there are solutions. And just as an aside, you listeners might be interested. And the water truck was here while we were talking. I was hoping it wasn't going to make too much noise, but
No, I didn't hear it. No.
our water comes by truck type thing, and our sewage leaves by truck. Thankfully, it's not the same truck type thing. It's because of permafrost, you can't put pipes in here type thing, so everything comes by truck. 8
Okay.
kilometers down to a pump house and grabs water. And
Yeah, and I spoke about the 3 years that we lived in Nova Scotia, rural Nova Scotia. This was in the 90s. And I discovered the fun fact, but it made me sad at the same time because we couldn't do anything about it. Our house is now serviced by fiber optic and in rural Nova Scotia. And when we were there, internet wasn't even a thing, honestly. But it made me wish that I could have bought it when it came back up on the market a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact. And that would have allowed me to work from home right there compared to dial up or who knows what else they had there before the fiber optic. But they've got the septic system and the well, no trucks coming by. I think you're pretty much relying on snow and the rain. But yeah, I tend to truly appreciate it. The kind of these different ways of living, and the good and the bad. And yeah, so I just again find that to be fascinating. So as far as I want to touch on a couple of things here first, I'd really love to know more about your cabin, because you seem to really love your cabin. What are your intentions with the cabin? What are you going to use it for?
getting away from the hustle and bustle of Arctic Bay.
All that damn traffic.
All the crap, the dust, and no, it's nice. There's not a bad place out here type thing, but that's just out there where you can be away. I think there's a little bit of regret that we aren't going to have the services amongst certain members of the family, that we aren't going to have services like cell phones and and things like that does it. My in-laws have a cabin right there, which is why we chose that spot. And in one of their windows, they can get one bar of the cell service. But I've searched all around mine because I was thinking about getting a booster, but I can't get anything right at the cabin, which is only meters away, type thing. But it's there. I can wade across the river and stand in a certain spot and get cell service and talk to Leia. And usually on the way back, I stop atop of the hill and text her and say I'm on my way home.
Okay.
Type thing when I'm there.
So are you going to be fishing in the cabin? Is it just to get away? Like, what will you be doing there?
Just hanging out, staying there from time to time. Yeah, again, that sounds strange, but getting out of town. Closer, we're out to my in-laws' cabin fairly regularly. They practically live out there, type thing. They're there. They're working on puzzles and stuff like that. So it's a quiet, simple kind of life.
Oh, my favorite kind of life. Oh, goodness. Tell you, it's not just life in the city, but I had to be apparently born with this ability to love technology and help other people with it. Where I honestly wished some days that I didn't have to deal with it all. It's a little simpler life. In 2018, there, as a matter of fact, Mom decided to retire after Dad passed, and she wanted to live on Vancouver Island for about a year and a half, and asked if I would come with her to at least get a winter away from the winters of Alberta. So we went there for a year and a half, as it turned out, and I started to take, I was 3 or 4 months in, a healthcare aid program, and used a little bit of technology, of course one does, but it was just more about, I wanted to have, in my mind, more of an impact on people's lives than I could helping them with technology, perhaps. And I just would take great pride in it, and I really admired the people who helped my dad in assisted living while he was there. The nurses, the doctors, the healthcare aides, and how hard they worked, and they seemed okay. A little stressed, but they seemed to be okay. And it was just again that impact on people's lives. To be brutally honest, I can literally sit in front of any computer that I ever have sat in front of, and I can identify things and say this needs to be fixed, or I can take care of this for you, or solve that frustration, or it needs a cleanup, or different things. But a lot of times, until you sit down with somebody and have that conversation about how do you use this, what are the problems that you're having, what are the problems I'm seeing, people tend to just live with the thing the way it is, and they'll Google something, or they'll, as you do, rightfully, look up YouTube videos and try to figure it out. And that's the way a lot of people do it. Whereas with healthcare, or being a healthcare aide, or nurse, doctor, you don't question the need. You need a nurse, you need a nurse, you need a doctor, there's a doctor. And you're not trying to hopefully think I can take care of take care of this myself, depending on the issue. So I really appreciate the value and, of course, the better pay. But it really just struck me on a very personal level while they were taking care of my dad. Of course, they never have enough resources to do what they should, everything that they would like them to do. But again, just the impact. I enjoy technology. I love technology, and learning how other people use it, whether it's next door or in Arctic Bay, Nunavut. It's a necessity. And that's why I ask my kind of final questions that I tend to ask people on my episodes here is, one, what do you love most about technology and why? And then the other one is, what do you hate most about technology and why? So those are the two questions I tend to end with. And I think that segues perfectly to that.
Yeah, I think for me, technology is ubiquitous.
It's a tool, you said, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tool, and it's something I grew up with. And there's this kind of continuum. You look back at your life and you go, oh my God, like the changes there's been there. Probably one of the things I like the most is the connectivity that you have, whether it's through social media, or I used to have a blog. I recently revived it, but I haven't really gone into it, type thing, called the House and Other Arctic Musings. And I started it when we were building the bed and breakfast,
Oh, yeah.
type thing. And there's still connections with people from that community. There's several communities that grew up around that thing, and have close people that I've never met and likely never will.
I'd love to come up to Arctic Bay and meet you one day, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Did I lose you? You there, Claire?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I think it's breaking up for just a few seconds. There. Okay,
Okay.
I think we're back. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we're not that far away. Flights in and out, it's rather expensive, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah. But
not. But
I
this is actually the only place I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere in my life, including where I grew up. This is the only place I've never had my parents who are passed now,
mhm.
my brother and sister come visit me, type thing. And I wish they would, but that's neither here nor there. But I think with technology, I think that the connectivity is probably one of the things with it. And I've grown up with technology. I started off in grade 10, my first computer science course, and the mainframe was at the university in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, 4 hours away, 400 kilometers away, type thing. And you had a card reader, and you did punch cards and wrote programs and things along that line. And you go through DOS and into Windows and to everything that there is now. When I got to Arctic Bay, it was dial-up, and I kept my provider in the Northwest Territories, so it was long distance dial-up, and you couldn't do any banking on it because it was
No.
both three secure. There was like three secure steps, and you would lose the phone partway through, type thing, and you'd have to start
Yeah,
all over.
wasn't reliable. No.
It would literally take 8 hours to do that. But at the same time, some people, when they think about you living in the north end of Baffin Island, going, "Oh, you're so isolated." And I've had a satellite dish Bell Express fuse since day one, since I got here, type thing, that we've kept. And there's got all the streaming services now. The vast majority of people here have Starlink. I won't, but we have cell service now, type thing. And you're not, the world is right here now. It's not, and there's people here that have grown up. My in-laws moved to town in 1969, to towns such as Arctic Bay would have been a town in 1969, living essentially from like people did 5,000 years ago, with a few modern nods like wood and flour and things along that line, but essentially living what people did 5,000 years ago
Yeah.
to today, where they have cell phones, they have
Yeah. I don't know if it's
cable.
isolated. I don't know if it's isolating as much of it is different. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. Like you talk
No,
about like things being shipped in, or you have the water trucks and the sewage trucks and again, I'm not trying to, it's not bad. It's just,
no,
it's different. And I appreciate that definitely for what it is. What is it, a couple of months a year? I forget exactly of where the sun doesn't come up, but you make do.
yeah, no, I don't mind the dark season at all.
Okay.
And actually, the people find the light, visitors find the light season generally harder than the dark season. The sun's up all the time. When do you sleep?
You've heard it all, have
One
you?
of my favorite tech stories is
Yeah.
one day I was over at my in-laws' place when my mother-in-law was playing. I think it was Dr. Mario or something, and she started it like at the highest level you could start the game at, type thing, and then on from there. And I was watching this and on. I said to Leia, I said to my wife, I said, "Your mom's incredible at this," and because I'm not a gamer, and I said, "Your mom's incredible at this." And Leia just looked at me and said, "You should have seen Grandma, a lady who spent literally all their life out on the land."
Oh, I think you're breaking up for a second again. Hold on there, Claire. I think we gotta, the connection is a little unreliable for a second.
Be frozen.
Okay, I think we're back. Go ahead.
Yeah, she was this lady that passed away about a year after I got here. But this little old lady that spent her life out on the land, type thing, that would spend 3 hours a day on Nintendo 64
I
thing,
appreciate it.
and be very
I
good
I
at it.
wasn't a gamer either, but I will say, and this I couldn't help but have this occur to me as you were saying that, where as much as I love technology, there's so much about it that's distracting. It's hard to, like you mentioned, you said productivity, and I certainly am productive with my computers and what I'm trying to do, and try to help others accomplish things as well on their computers. But for what, not to bitch and moan, but for what Windows has become, I've spent more time just trying to figure things out and get rid of things that are frustrating me so I can get back to the thing that I care about that I'm trying to do. So that's why when mom decided that she's house sitting right now, house and pet sitting and taking care of some plants. And she's done that in Calgary, in Edmonton, in BC. She's considered doing it in Ontario. She does it for free. She's retired, so she likes the adventure and exploring new places and taking care of things, people's houses and pets and so forth. She loves it, in fact. galehouseandpetsits.ca is the landing page for it. But when she wasn't going to lug her computer everywhere, right? And I got it, it took me significant effort to get that Windows 10 machine alone, never mind Windows 11, she'll never go near it, to where it's to a usable state where she can do exactly what she wants to do on it, and hopefully it won't bug her. But since she can't take that with her, I convinced her to spend a little extra money and get a MacBook Air, the relatively new 15-inch. And I think she's had two minor issues the entire time she's had it for the last 6 months. I've got a Mac Mini in front of me. I do more on it, but I will never buy another Windows box again unless I have the absolute need for my business. Because my main PC going for my next main computer is going to be a Mac. So it just technology can be absolutely frustrating, and Windows has become just a nightmare for whatever Microsoft is trying to do with it, the upsell and other things. And technology should make life easier for us. Like people have their phones, but there's a purpose to it. You're trying to do a specific thing. Maybe it's just play a game, but you're trying to do that thing on that device, and you're expecting it to work well and be reliable. You keep talking about the internet connection there, which, as far as I can tell, is 4G. So it's those towers around town that upload and download to the satellite. Sorry?
One tower.
One tower. Oh, God willing, that stays around. But
Yeah.
I'm honestly shocked at the quality of the connection. It's cut out a little bit, hopefully not more, knock on wood, during our conversation. Not unexpected for the kind of connection that it is. But I think it was Mom's second house sit, I believe it was. I think it was 2022. It was the first and last rural house that she'll ever do. She enjoyed it, but it just wasn't worth doing something like that again. She prefers to sit in the city with the amenities. Also a little isolating, if I'm being honest. And we're not obviously we're talking 5 or 10 minutes out of town, not up north. So that's define isolating. But you made your point, and I appreciate those as well. But she had a 4G connection, and it wasn't Starlink. It was I think it was Bell or something. I don't remember, but it was the 4G cellular data connection, the same thing that we use on our phones.
Yeah.
Most of us use on our phones, and the connection was good enough where she could do online banking. She could watch a Netflix movie if the weather was nice, stuff like that. She could use Google Docs. We would communicate via that. But I could not connect to her computer to help her remotely. I had to go there a handful of times, as a matter of fact. Another reason we won't do it again, because I could not connect remotely. So I had to go in person, the hour and a half to that particular house sit, that rural property, and do what I needed to do in person. 4G or cellular data it's good for what it is, but it definitely comes down to location and quality of signal, reliability, and these things. So I'm thrilled that maybe even LTE, but these technologies have been available for, I gather, a number of years now in Arctic Bay and up north, and that certainly seems to be the case with I think I forget the name of the company, but the company that operates those towers and those connections. So I'm just thrilled that you guys have the quality of internet that you do, and I wish it was fiber, maybe one day, I don't know. But again, the connection for the most part today has just been spectacular, considering what's available to you and frankly where you are.
Yeah, no, that's part of the way of the world. We're certainly not cutting edge here, but we certainly get by.
Yeah.
It's the other part of your question was, what don't I like about
That's right.
technology?
What do you hate about technology? I think it's a very strong word. What frustrates you about it?
I think probably the thing I like the least about it is, and it's related to social media, and that technology has brought in the social media and that sort of thing, and that's a certain amount of negativity that it brings into the community and the world, and the misinformation that's there, and having to counter it at times. And for a while, I viewed myself as policeman of the truth on the internet, and I finally realized that was
That's a mistake. Yeah.
that was an impossible job to do thing. But that's probably the biggest thing about it. Some people have criticized that kids these days are always on their phone. Heck, I'm always on my phone,
From
sort
what
of
you
thing.
said, how much you rely on it for different things, I can't really blame you.
Yeah, but but in a lot of ways, some kids are more social
Yes.
remotely than they are. It's just different than what I grew up with, that type thing. And different isn't necessarily a bad thing, type thing. I think we spend too much time criticizing that than do. But the bad part to me is the negativity and the misinformation that ends up there, and I think it's creating
Yeah.
problems for the country and communities at large, which are more and more prevalent as
Yeah.
time goes on.
I've listened to a few podcasts in this regard and different perspectives, even from some people who are your professors. There's a guy named Jeff Jarvis, actually, who is a kind of, he calls it deorbiting, but he's basically semi-retired or leaving from being a New York University professor. And he was on a podcast just yesterday talking about a number of things, but particularly internet culture, the history of the technology, the future of technology, how we're using social media and AI for that matter to do things, and how do we reconcile that, right? How do we make it, how do we deal with it safely and appropriately where it's not destroying things? Whether that be the culture or how the information that we consume. And I remember even outside of Jeff Jarvis in that conversation, he's also on a podcast called This Week in Google that I love as well. Fantastic guy and extremely knowledgeable. But back in high school, just to see that progression, as I know you have as well, in those years, of it's no longer a matter of finding the information. It's a matter of, I want to say reconciling it, but it's a matter of filtering it. It's a matter of knowing and having the awareness and the critical thinking skills to what do I pay attention to and from what source.
It's a little
It
heartbreaking
is.
to see the way that has gone and that there aren't enough critical thought going into things.
I will say that as far as critical thinking, absolutely, there's a lack of it, but there's always been a lack of it. There's always been the different. I don't want to get psychological or whatever the word is, but there's always been people who, this was on a podcast I was listening to, like I said yesterday, there's always been people who, hopefully most of us, but maybe that's wishful thinking, who have these critical thinking skills and can make these decisions and figure things out and make sense of it. There's a block button for a reason. If,
Yeah,
if someone wants to engage in friendly, healthy discourse about something and have a healthy, reasonable argument about something where we can learn from each other and maybe change different ways of thinking or opinions, again, to a reasonable extent, I think those are conversations worth having. But when it's just hateful rhetoric, it has no place. Nothing good comes from that.
yeah,
It's incredibly hard now to find good quality, intelligent, nuanced information about anything. And we like to, like, there's the traditional sources. I went to journalism school, so I was going to get into that. CBC, you mentioned, but there's a number of quality news stories that are out there. But the stuff's being pumped out every single day. And it's hard to dig through that, even for me, to find the part that's relevant to me, or, oh my God, I wish more people knew this. And then we can make more informed decisions about how to take care of our communities, to maintain our technology, to elect leaders who know what the heck they're doing. I'll just say it that way. So that's what we're coping with right now, and particularly the younger people. They're learned skills. It also comes down to quote unquote common sense, but again, to have those critical thinking skills where it's not the information we have trouble finding now. It's making sense of it and having healthy conversations or even debates to find common ground to make things better. And yeah, you just accepted what you were told in that 2 minute soundbite. So that's why I appreciate YouTube. I appreciate social media. I take the time to curate my stuff as best I can. And I love to connect with people like you, Claire, critical thinkers, but also who live differently than I do and live in different places than many people do. But Red Deer now 100,000 people, and you said there's 35,000, was it? Or 3,500? Which in that small town where you were an RCMP officer. It's great to hear these different perspectives and how people live and to go, oh my goodness, that's interesting.
Yeah. Better plug this in.
Okay. I'm rambling on, but it's a kind of a passionate thing of mine too. I think about this
Yeah.
stuff a lot, so I appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you for taking time out of your day, Claire. I know you work hard and you got a family to take care of and managing all that is or has to do with living in Arctic Bay, as isolating as it is or not, depending on who you talk to. You seem to be doing all right. And yes,
Home.
it's home. Thank you. I love that. And I hope to one day visit, if not have a coffee with you. I don't know. Someday, one day.
Best coffee north of 73.
Say again?
Best coffee north of 73.
Is there a shop in town you're referring to, or is that homemade?
No, me. I'm a
Oh,
I'm a coffee snob.
I like my tea. I like my tea. I do. But I'm so grateful that the technology exists. Like I said, the simple things in life, but they're important, where you can use your phone to talk to me like this from Arctic Bay, Nunavut. Who saw that coming? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
And we can have this awesome conversation that I wasn't even sure was going to happen. But now that, again, better informed of, yeah, people live up north and they have a pretty good life doing it. And there are some days where I wish I had that kind of a quote unquote simpler life compared to the hustle and bustle of living in the city. And the things are expensive, but I would love to have the simpler life again. So I, in part, envy you.
Oh, I have a good life. So
Indeed. And it's like you say, it's home. Yeah. So what else can you say? I just absolutely love that. Thank you for taking the time and talking about your technology and your work and your cabin. I'm sad I didn't get to meet the dogs, but
they need to come out soon. So
got it. I'll let you go. But please say hi to the wife for me or anybody else that's there. Just absolutely wonderful to have this conversation with you, Clara. Thank you.
quite enjoyed it, Kevin.
All right. Take care of yourselves.
Yeah, you too.
Bye. That'll do it for my conversation with Clare in Arctic Bay. I truly hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. You can follow Clare over on Mastodon, and you can follow me over on Mastodon, Threads, and yes, even Twitter. You'll find show notes and links over at kevinthetechguy.ca. You can click on the Kevin Talks Tech podcast link in the More menu, or go directly to that page using kevintalkstech.ca. So kevinthetechguy.ca or kevintalkstech.ca. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. We could talk about your life a little bit, your business or the work that you're doing, and how kind of technology is part of that, as well as the technology that you're using in general in your life. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to me. My email address is hello@kevinthetechguy.com. I'd also love to hear about what you love about technology and, frankly, what frustrates you about it. Again, please reach out. hello@kevinthetechguy.ca. Thank you for watching and listening.